Is it the CEO? Is it the board of directors? Is it the company? Or is it just modern trends? What is up with Harley Davidson and how can they fix their woes? Let's get into it. Hello, welcome to RevelatorAlf. I hope you're all well. If you like what I do here, don't forget to like and share the video, subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications bell for all future videos. So I just got back from a glorious ride on my heroic Harley. Well, my bike might still be heroic, but the company and the whole internet world has gone a bit crazy, hasn't it? It's over Harley Davidson, its woke issues, and it's kind of died down a little bit this last week since Harley Davidson backtracked a little bit. But most people out there are kind of saying, especially in my comment section, and I suppose any videos that are kind of commenting on this right now, they're kind of saying, well, Harley Davidson is over and it's all this, and the CEO needs to go, and they need to change the bikes, they need to change their pricing. You know, if they're not made in America, then they're not American bikes, all this kind of stuff. So here's a question, really. It's a question for everybody out there. What will make Harley Davidson your favorite motorcycle brand again? What will make them, if they ever were, of course, but what would make them a great motorcycle company? What would make them sell huge numbers of motorcycles all around the world? So, do they need a CEO change? Do they need to take the company in a different direction? From my part, I would say absolutely yes. They do need a CEO change, and they also need to look at the whole board of directors and say, what kind of people do we have at the top of the company and which direction are they going? They need to kind of re-energize or reconnect with their core customer base. Now, does that mean that they only supply motorcycles that their core customer base wants? Just remember, the core customer base is plus 35, plus 40 and above. They're aging. So does that necessarily mean that they only have to answer to them? For me, no. They have to change the direction of the company, but they also just can't listen to one demographic. They've got to listen to all, and they've got to supply to all. Now, in terms of this DEI, right, diversity, equity, inclusion, nobody has ever said, as far as I've ever heard, that nobody has ever said that nobody should be treated unfairly or nobody should be prejudiced against in any workplace, which I totally disagree with, or disagree with that kind of concept that anybody has to be prejudiced against for whatever reason, right? But what I'm saying is, if that changes the way you're working, your policy changes the way you're working, and you're producing motorcycles, and you're not getting the best people for the role, regardless of what their background is, then you're failing. You're failing yourself, you're failing shareholders, and you're failing your customer base as well. But is that even really the issue? Okay, let's just put all that aside, the woke stuff, the DEI stuff aside. Let's put just the CEO and the board of directors aside just for 1 second, because it's all included, right? What is the major problem with Harley Davidson? Well, I've got to say, from reading some of my comments, and I do read them, by the way, people, more than most, have said repeatedly over the years that Harley Davidsons are just too expensive for what they are. Okay, there are lots of expensive motorcycles out there. There are lots of boutique brands that are even more expensive, but those are boutique brands. They're building bespoke motorcycles, kind of. But in terms of a mass producer like Harley Davidson, they're producing motorcycles that are just too expensive for the kind of motorcycle that you get, the kind of technologies on there, the kind of performance that it gives you. Now, some people like that in terms of the type of motorcycle it is and the kind of performance and technology, and other people don't. So I'm going to park the technology side of it and the performance side of it, because it's a Harley, right? A Harley's a Harley. We all know what it is. But then it comes down to the value for money. And what's happened is, under this new CEO especially, that they moved away from a program to kind of diversify their product range and who they would aim it out all over the world. And they've sort of narrowed it down into only going for high-end consumers. A high-end product, which they would call it, for a high-end consumer or a high-value consumer. Now, I've remarked on this in the past. I think it's absolutely the wrong play. It's the wrong thing to do. And this, for me, is what is biting Harley Davidson right in the derriere. It's not this woke stuff. It's got nothing to do with that. Whilst it's a temporary thing, whilst it might upset a lot of people, whilst it might cause people to boycott the brand and all that kind of stuff, and some numpty on YouTube to start machine gunning his Harley Davidson, or is blowing it up with a bazooka or whatever the hell he's doing. Don't be swayed by all that nonsense either, because I bet your bottom dollar he's just done it for clicks, and you can bet your bottom dollar as well that they weren't even his own motorcycles. He's basically just bought them, some cheap motorcycle somewhere, $2,000 or $3,000, and he's just rode them onto his farm or whatever it is, and he's just taken pot shots at it. And this is another thing as well. That's nothing new as well. People have been doing this with vehicles for ages, taking them into a field and blowing the hell out of them with either guns or bazookas or God knows whatever else. He's just jumped onto the bandwagon about Harley Davidson. Well, I'm going to blow it up. Oh, look at me, how revolutionary I am. It's all a load of nonsense. It's all noise. And I've said this in the past, it's all old news and it's just a load of noise. So what is the key issue here? What's going to bring you back to, let's just say, think that Harley Davidson is a good brand, or Harley Davidson make decent bikes, or Harley Davidson, are the kind of bike that you would want to buy? Does it just come down to price? Is that what we're talking about? Are we talking about, regardless of the motorcycles that they produce, it's down to price? So if it's just down to price, what price do they need to come down to in order for you to start wanting to buy them? And if those motorcycles can't come down, what do Harley Davidson as a company need to produce to bring your custom to them? That's the key thing here. So for me, it's a multi-layered problem. It's also a multi-layered solution. It's not just one thing. It can't just be that a CEO comes in, a new CEO replaces this one, and all of a sudden all is going to be well with the company. It isn't. It's going to take a lot more than that. The whole core of the company needs to change. They need to change their values. They need to change who they're aiming their products at. And they need to look at price point and what people want to afford. There's a very interesting comment. As I say, I do read the comments. And quite a few have mentioned this as well. So you look at the young people now. Well, a lot of them are not even getting into motorcycling. They would prefer electric bicycles or electric scooters who can function, do all the things that a moped could do or a small CC bike could do, and they don't even have to get a license, especially for urban riding, right? You just get on a scooter, electric bicycle, and away you go. It serves every purpose that you need. Yes, they might be a little bit expensive in some cases, but in other cases, they're really, really cheap. And kids are getting on these bikes. So there's your market that you're losing already. Now, this is not a Harley Davidson issue. This is a motorcycle industry issue, right? So how do you get them back? How do you get these people back? How do you get these kids from teens to early 20s? How do you get them into motorcycling? Well, it comes down to purely a product that is appealing and is cheap. That's it. That's where it comes down to. And you've got to compete with electric bicycles and electric scooters. And perhaps now that market is gone. Maybe there isn't even a market anymore. So really you're kind of looking at electric scooters, possibly, but really cheap petrol-driven mopeds or scooters as well. That's what's going to give a viable alternative for any new person coming into the industry, let's say, or coming into the motorcycle riding sort of lifestyle. So you're always going to have a problem. You're always going to have a problem with the changing values, the changing habits of people, the new generation coming through. People thinking that, I'm definitely not going to be spending 25, 30, 40,000 pounds, dollars, shekels, or even less, 15, 16, 20,000 on a motorcycle, which is absolutely insane. I've been saying this for so long. The prices of these motorcycles are just insane. But granted, if you still want to sell those in small numbers, no problem. But you've got to sell something that's a lot cheaper, a lot more affordable, let's just say, for the everyday person who doesn't really care about the brand and the prestige. They just want some kind of motorcycle, moped that can get them from A to B and just have a bit of fun on. So why is it that some motorcycle manufacturers are producing small CC motorcycles to great effect? And if you go back on my channel, I've said this repeatedly in the past, 2 or 3 years ago perhaps. Watch out for the Chinese brands. Watch out for the Indian brands. Watch out for the likes of Royal Enfield. Watch out for the likes of any motorcycle manufacturer, BMW, KTM. Triumph, who've kind of switched stance, and they haven't abandoned their core roots in terms of their bigger motorcycles, but they start producing smaller motorcycles. And guess what? Triumph have had amazing success now with their 400s. Royal Enfields have had amazing success as well, all over the world, and their market is growing and growing and growing. So is that what Harley Davidson need to do? They need to produce smaller motorcycles as well as the bigger motorcycles. All their motorcycles just need to come down in price. Do they just need to get away from this premium brand ideology? Do they just need to get away from we are so much better because we are Harley Davidson? The problem is that may have worked a long time ago. It's not working now. And the people who you were relying on to buy your motorcycles because they believe the dream, right? They believe the hype. Those people don't buy it anymore. They don't believe you anymore. And especially when the company has taken a right turn, or a left turn in this case, and alienated a lot of people. Now they're getting backlash from the left and the right for their policies. One for imposing those policies in the first place, and then now for retracting them as well from the other side. They're in a lose-lose situation. But again, try to ignore the noise on the internet, because a lot of these people don't even care about Harley Davidson. They don't even care about motorcycling. They don't even ride motorcycles as well. They're just jumping on the bandwagon and reporting about all this kind of stuff. You and I who ride motorcycles, it affects us. And it affects our children if they get into motorcycle, or our grandchildren if they get into motorcycling, the options available and the price point and so on and so forth. So if you look at Harley Davidson as a brand that you once admired, or the bikes that you once liked, what is it simply that would win your favour again? That would make you look at Harley Davidson as a brand again? Is it the type of bikes that they produce? Well, I believe they already have the technology there to produce much better motorcycles, or motorcycles that would appeal to a different kind of rider. And that is on the Revolution Max engine. They've also got smaller engine motorcycles that are producing in China, and they're shipping them out to Southeast Asia and Australasia. They've also got the X440 that's going to India as well. So make those more readily available, but don't make them more expensive than other like motorcycles. It comes down to price. You can't impose a Harley tax on a Harley Davidson, which is basically just a copy of something else. So this is where they've screwed themselves up a little bit. The X440 in India could have been the Triumph 400. It could have been a huge success if they had just brought it to Europe and brought it to the United States and sold it at a very reasonable price. The same with the X350 and the X500 that's gone to Australia. I've been told, again from comments as well, I'm not 100% sure myself, but please let us know as well, that certainly the X500 is basically just a copy of the Benelli. Just a copy of the Benelli, just with a few accent changes so that you know it's a Harley Davidson. But essentially, it's a Benelli. The Benelli costs about $1,000, $1,500 Australian dollars less than the Harley Davidson. So if you've got to be a fan of Harley Davidson, I want to own a Harley Davidson. But when you look at the bike, that one and that one, they look virtually exactly the same, and one costs more than the other. You've just shot yourselves in the foot, because people who are going to look at that, young people are going to look at that and say, why do I need to buy a Harley Davidson when I can just buy that or something even cheaper? So it's not just about producing smaller bikes. It's not just about where you sell those motorcycles. It always comes down to the price and what the competition are doing. And if the competition are doing better, they're producing them cheaper. And they're also not so concerned about where they produce the motorcycles as well. One of the problems that Harley Davidson has is that kind of nationalistic identity that it has, or it once had, and there's a lot of patriotism around it, certainly from the United States, right? All people just want that American brand because they want that American culture. I get it, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Whereas other companies, they don't really have that issue. I'll take Triumph, for example. Triumph, yes, British company, you could say. But when it comes down to it, they can shift their production from the UK. I believe it goes to Thailand. I think it goes to somewhere else, according to what is favourable economically as well. And they can look at resources and the costs of raw materials and employment from year on year. And then all their manufacturing, their assembly plants are all geared up to produce the same motorcycles to the same specifications, bar I think the Rocket. I'm not 100% Rocket 3, I think, but they could just shift production. Whereas like the Harley Davidson, they can't do that. You know, so this is one of the problems. Now there's a big furore that Harley Davidson motorcycles, the Nightster, the Pan America, and the Sports RS, which are not great sellers. I said this before. They want to shift that over to Thailand. Oh no, this is a big uproar. It's a big uproar. Well, why is it a big uproar if you're not even riding those motorcycles yourself, for a start? And also, they're not big sellers anyway. And also, abroad, that's where people are mostly buying those motorcycles as well. And doesn't necessarily mean just because that line of motorcycles is going abroad that you're going to lose jobs there, where you could, if you really wanted to, but just boost the workforce, would produce another kinds of motorcycles. Or instead of just sending those Rev Max bikes over to Thailand, why don't you just produce other motorcycles that would appeal to your biggest market, which is United States, of course, but we would appeal to a different demographic. We talked about the Bronx for God knows how long. We've talked about a smaller Pan America. We've talked about other styles of Rev Max engine bikes, what could be produced. And they've missed the boat here. They've missed the boat totally on what they could be producing. So not only the smaller X350, X500, whatever, motorcycles, X440, that could be shipped to other markets and they could get sales, right? But they've got to be sold at a proper price, a competitive price, a very cheap price. The ones that are equally as expensive or as cheap, let's say, as your competitors. You've got to produce more bikes, more styles of bikes that other people, non-traditional Harley riders, would want to buy. Because regardless of what the core audience wants, because they want the Softails and the baggers and everything, well, that's a reducing market. And if most people are complaining at the price of the brand new motorcycles, you've got an ever-shrinking market. So you've got to change things up. You've got to reduce the unit price of all your motorcycles right across the board, but especially the big expensive motorcycles. You've got to make big plays to reduce not just a couple of motorcycle models, but lots and lots and lots, but right across the board. Those unit prices have got to come down, and substantially down as well, so that people in a comment section are not going to say Harley Davidson's are trash, Harley Davidson's are, overpriced junk, Harley Davidson's this, Harley Davidson's that. You've got to shut those people up. And until you shut those people up, these problems are never going to go away. So for me, it's not just a CEO issue. It's not just a board of directors. It's just not about assembly plants and where you manufacture your products and an identity of a brand. It's much more than that. It's much more layered than that. And it's really about product and price and your demographic audience or your target audience. And Harley Davidson have got this completely wrong for a long, long time. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you like what I do here, don't forget to like and share the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notifications bell for all future videos. But what would you do to Harley Davidson right now if you were invited by the board of directors to go in and say, what do we need to change here to make the company successful again, to increase sales, to increase profitability, all those buzzwords, all those economic buzzwords? What would they have to do? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Catch you again. Bye now.